Hallo allerseits und willkommen. Hello and welcome to HHai. I'm very happy that finally we are about to roll. This is an event, two-day event, this afternoon and tomorrow. And some information who we are. Well, we are a research project called AIX Design. We are an offspring of the department design of the HHai in Hamburg. The project is active since about 2.5, 3 years. And in that time, we had a number of metamorphic developments. Today's incarnation is HHai, a conference which is hybrid. Well, this is a common terminus these days, but it's always interesting to see whether it works or not. So I hope that you guys at home, you receive as well via YouTube. We have some guests here in the Design Zentrum Hamburg, and we also can encourage all of you to come by. If you are in the region, if you are in Hamburg or about, then come. As you can see, if you look out of the window, we have a beautiful first spring day. And this is especially helpful because after those two talks we are presenting today, we will have a nice get-together. And we have this terrace here, the deck, which should be not such a bad place to hang out and meet other real people, which is not so common these days anywhere. All right, so I said you can come by. The same accounts, obviously, for tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have a number of presentations, as you can see in our schedule online. We'll start about 9:30 and we'll run the program until 7 o'clock in the afternoon, early evening, followed by another get-together on that beautiful deck. And as far as I'm informed, the weather should be as beautiful as today, tomorrow, maybe even a little bit warmer. Now, what are we doing here? We are presenting visionary talks. We are starting in about 25 minutes at 6 o'clock CET with a team coming from Lisbon in Europe, later followed by a speaker from Salzburg, also Europe. I'm pointing out this European thing because tomorrow we're going to have people from the US. We'll have people from even China, and I think the largest distance will be our starting speaker tomorrow. She is presenting from Bali. So the hybrid thing has its merits and benefits, I guess. Now, before I speak too long, I think it's most important that, again, we'll point out who we are. And we are a team of students. Myself, I'm teaching professor at Hamburg University of Applied Sciences, and may I ask the team members all come for a moment here on the stage so that we can demonstrate and testify that it's not just me or something virtual, but that's real people. And that, what we are doing here, come. All right, so even more. I step aside. So that's the real thing here. I'm just the guy who speaks. And I'm very happy that some of you have really followed AIX Design for all the 2.5 years. Some others joined us just recently. As I said already, we have a number of incarnations already behind us in the pockets. There is a nice series of fireside chats, online fireside chats, which we conducted in spring 2020, 2021, I'm sorry, completely mixed up here. And then most important, maybe for us these days, is our project Creative Kitchen. AI Creative Kitchen, which is a series of workshops. You can book us, you can book those guys and ladies here as workshop facilitators for those Creative Kitchen workshops. Those workshops we'll also conduct tomorrow as part of our program. Unfortunately, for those at home, you won't be able to participate because this is present only. And these are the people who will do it together with, I think, each has a group of about 12 participants. So, thank you. Some of you will meet them later or tomorrow. That was the second thing. We are doing presentations. We're going to have workshops. Those were the people who are conducting those. We're going to have a panel tomorrow afternoon where representatives from Hamburg-based companies will tell on stage and tells the audience, hello Francis, about the Design Zentrum and yeah.
Yes, also from me, a very warm welcome to the Design Zentrum Hamburg. We belong to Hamburg Kreativgesellschaft and we are a municipal initiative to promote design in Hamburg. At the Design Zentrum, we keep an eye on all relevant topics, which of course also includes artificial intelligence. AI has the potential to revolutionize creative processes in design and is already doing so. So I'm very happy about this cooperation with Professor Peter Kabel and his great team of AIX Design Space from the University of Applied Sciences Hamburg. And many thanks to everybody involved, and I'm very excited about the speakers' contributions tomorrow. The panelists, the workshop tomorrow here at Hamburg.
Thank you that you host us here. I also should say it's really a very nice space here, and Design Zentrum Hamburg just got this new name. We are, I think, the first show here on that space, so that's also something we enjoy. So I think that was almost what I could tell you. Again, maybe some of you are coming just in now. This is HHai, Hamburg AI. We are discussing all things creative AI. We ourselves are designers from the department design at the Hamburg University of Applied Sciences in Hamburg. We have this research project called AIX Design for about 2.5 years. We do a variety of things. Most important for us these days, beside that conference which we are throwing now, is our workshop initiative, AI Creative Kitchens. Our observation was and is that many creative people of all trades, be it from the area of text design, UX design, architecture, fashion, and so on, name it, are in that idea of something black and white. Tomorrow maybe AI will substitute me. I'm really scared about that. And the other side is, oh no, forget about it. It will never happen that machines will really create something by itself. And we believe that reality is really exactly in the middle. It is, in our observation, essential that creative of all trades start to really engage with algorithms and lose that respect, but also sometimes that feeling that there is nothing which is serious. So, and that exactly is what we try to counter with our creative kitchen workshops. Like in a kitchen school, you go there, many things are already prepared, your ingredients are there, your tools are there, there is a recipe, you know exactly what to do, and then you just do it, and then you have created your own food, and you get some self-confidence on it, and then you start cooking yourself at home, so to say. And that is exactly what we are trying to provide with our Creative Kitchen workshops, AI Creative Kitchen workshops. You come in with actually not much than just a laptop, and we show you how to really employ, how to use those tools which are out there already, which are working in a certain way, which sometimes are a little bit quirky to access or understand how exactly they work, like in the kitchen, and then after a short hours, 3-4 hours, you are better in that and understand it better and get a better understanding. Will it substitute me tomorrow? Yeah. Everybody will be substituted who is not really caring about, or will it never be able to do something meaningful itself? Well, you will see it is able, but it's still you as designers, as creatives, who have to really work with those tools. They don't do anything magical without you, yeah, that's what we are doing with those Creative Kitchen workshops. Tomorrow, if you come by, you can be part of those workshops. We have 2 of them in parallel tomorrow at, let me see, 10:30 CET here in Hamburg. It's on one side visual AI, AI which creates visuals of all sorts and manipulates visuals of all sorts. And then the other one is language AI, AI which creates obviously text and language material of all sorts. So, what is the time? Still some minutes to go. I'm looking over there. Benjamin, are our speakers already possibly coming in? Because I don't see it myself. No, okay, good, but they are still good to go. Yeah, I repeat again, sorry for those who are here already. You came in time, everything fine, but we are having people out there online. Yeah, myself, I would possibly also be not very early in such an online event, rather maybe jump in exactly when the time is due. So therefore, I'm a little bit the Pausenclown. I don't know what this means in English, but that's me, myself. Or as far as I know, in TV shows, in TV studios, there's also people who start, you know, warming up the audience. So maybe I should do that. No, I don't. Don't be worried. So, yeah, hello. This is HHai. We are a conference starting in a couple of minutes. Today and tomorrow, we are presenting a number of very interesting speakers from really around the globe. Today, we are starting with a team from Lisbon and someone from Salzburg. The team from Lisbon is Sofia, Crespo, and Feileacan, McCormick. I hope that I pronounced the name somewhat correct. The team is called Entangled Others, and they're working in the space where they bridge human work with non-human work. That's my words. They will explain, obviously, much better than I'm able to do. And then later at 6:30 CET, we'll have Matthias Röder from Beethoven X. He will call in from Salzburg. Here we are talking about music generation, and not any music generation, but music which could have been also created by Beethoven himself. Tomorrow morning, we are starting with Lulu Lee. She is calling in from Bali, and then followed by Zhao Juxi. He is calling in from Shenzhen in China. Later that day, we're going to have also people from New York, but also from Munich, Stuttgart, and Singapore. We are not only showing visionary, let's say, art, more in the art space projects, but also very down-to-earth practical applications of creative AI in the field of language, in the field of music, in the field, obviously, of pictures, and also in the field of automatic layout generation and automatic music DJing. Very good keyword. We are here at the Design Zentrum Hamburg. It's a place formerly known as Design Export. A nice place in the center of the Hamburg Hafen City urban development area. We have a beautiful deck here, and it's the first day of spring, I feel, outside. And we are happy that at around 7 CET we are starting here our get-together. I can tell you there is some drinks, and I was promoting that it's not any drinks, that we'll have Corona beer. Guess why? It's, I think, a day where you can really expect that you can meet people here face to face, something which was not possible for so long, and discuss about the topics we are interested in. The topics we are interested in here are obviously creative AI, all things where AI and creative people of all trades are collaborating together, be it in the field of graphic design, be it in the field of game design, fashion design, whatever, text work, music, name it. We have this research project which is active now for about 2.5 years. HHai, the event we are rolling in a couple of minutes, is yet the latest incarnation of this research project. We also have something running, it's called Creative Kitchen, AI Creative Kitchen. And we did work already in last spring. We had a nice series of online fireside chats and other things more. If you are interested in other projects of AI X design than the HHai conference we are having here, go to our website. You will find all the other activities we are also doing. Yeah, we are guests of the Design Zentrum Hamburg. That was what I was saying. It's a hybrid conference. Some folks are here already in presence. Tomorrow I know that many have registered to come here in person, which I advise, especially now after that long time when we could not meet in person. I'm looking forward, and I'm really happy that we are lucky that exactly in that days when this starts to be possible again, we can offer the platform of this event. That's very good. Come by, be part of it, be part of the people who are here. And you also can obviously join us online on the YouTube channel most of you currently are doing. So we're starting in a couple of minutes. I think 5 minutes or something we do have. And I'm asking myself, are our guests already there? Yeah, great. Okay, very good. So then I hope that Sofia and Feileacan can also follow us online. It's the YouTube live channel we are using, and our speakers are calling in via Zoom, and we're trying to merge those things. Technically perfect. I hope that we are managing to do so. And you guys here in the audience, you can follow us, but you also see my window, my chat window. Anyway, maybe I close it if someone uses it in an inappropriate way. I don't expect, but cursor? My cursor is gone. I don't know. Okay, here. Yeah. Once more, I start. Hello and welcome to HHai. We are a conference starting in a couple of minutes. We're all about questions on the intersection of creative work and artificial intelligence. We see that there is a growing number of really very powerful tools helping, supporting, and in some ways also substituting human work in the field of artificial intelligence. We are not very focused on one trade. It's visual design, it's fashion design, architecture, music, text work, name it, everywhere the same. Tools are coming, which are very powerful and in parts also creating work themselves. Obviously triggered and used by creative people. Those we think will benefit very much of the development which is starting and going very quick these days. We feel it's disruptional and it's a good idea to be part of that disruption, active part of that disruption, find out what you can make those tools for you, doing for you. And that's what we are talking about here. We will have rather visionary contributors, but we are also having very hands-on practical approaches, especially tomorrow afternoon. We'll have also those AI Creative Kitchen workshops tomorrow. They are in presence. You have to come here to do them. It's one workshop on visual AI and another workshop on language AI. We show you practically how you can use those tools, which tools are there, which are easy to access, and also very important, what do you have to do as a designer to, as input, that you get a useful output from those tools. So we give you a first insight in a 3 or 4 hour workshops, and then you can better judge, will it be something which will substitute me, or will it be something which can support me? Yeah? So that's what we believe, that creative AI should not be translated as artificial intelligence, but rather as augmented intelligence. It augments the ability of us creative people, in our opinion. And that is what we'll try to find out and to prove, and to also hope you bringing on you on our sides with that things, starting in a couple of minutes with speakers team Entangled others from Lisbon, calling in from Lisbon via Zoom. And then later we'll continue today with Matthias Röder from Salzburg, Beethoven X. There it's about music. And tomorrow morning we are starting at 9:30 CET with Lulu Lee, who will call in live from Bali, and then followed by Xiao Yuxi calling in from Shenzhen in China. Later in the afternoon of the European Central Time, we will have speakers from Singapore, from New York, from Munich, Stuttgart, and other places in Europe. I think it's a quite interesting program. Paris, I forgot. I think we have a real interesting program put together. I'm already extending my thanks to all those who are participating in this event, being as speakers outside Hamburg, or also be it the AIX design team here in Hamburg, here on the ground. So, I think we are about to go, 1 minute to go. I'll grab a drink, and then I welcome Sofia and Feileacan. Welcome to HHai, Hamburg AI. We have a program which starts now, and I'm very happy to present you Sofia and Feileacan, Sofia Crespo and Feileacan McCormick. They form a team called Entangled Others Studio. They are based out of Lisbon in Portugal, and I'm very happy that they are our first speakers here. I expect something really visionary and artsy, but I myself, I'm very interested what will happen now. The idea is, Sofia and Feileacan, that you give us a presentation which should not be much longer than 20 minutes. And then if you participants remote on YouTube, you can put your questions in the chat on YouTube Live, and we will bring it here on the stage and discuss it then after that 20 minutes Sofia and Feileacan will present to us. Sofia, Feileacan, I don't know, it's a little bit tricky for me because I don't know whether you are here or not. And okay.
Hello.
Hello. Very good.
So can you see us well? And yeah, we can share the screen.
I can hear you here on the stage. I'm not sure how it is at home. Yeah? Please say something.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so we're Feileacan McCormick and Sofia Crespo, and we're very happy to be here today sharing with you a bit about the thoughts behind our work and what inspires us to work with AI and nature. So
we often like to start with a question, really, and that is, can you imagine a color you haven't seen before? Now, this might sound trivial as questions go, but it does actually, even if you try very, very hard, turn out to be something it's not really possible to do. Any color we can imagine is based upon the colors we've seen so far. So even though we, can only see part of the world, it's important to realize, and for us it's been part of like the sort of inspirational process for us as to understand that there are many species who can, for example, the peacock mantis shrimp, who have potentially somewhere between 10, I think, and 13 photoreceptors who can see a visible light spectrum much bigger than what we can see. Now, this is interesting because there's another question we could ask here, and that is, what about an animal you've never seen before? Now, if we wind the clocks back to medieval ages, you have these illustrations made by medieval illustrators who try to draw creatures they'd never seen before, such as, for example, beavers, hippopotamuses, crocodiles, oysters, oddly enough, lions, and a variety of exotic birds. Now, these are all things that clearly seem to be made up of components of more familiar things. So with a beaver, you have the rodent-like animal with a fish tail, or the hippopotamus, which is a weird mix of a fish with a long tubular snout, which is really quite fascinating. So what this has to do with what we do is we use primarily generative tools, especially AI. And for us, when working visually, very often what we get through using these tools is some kind of visual distillation. Now, this is, of course, oversimplifying things a lot. However, it does underline some of the interesting aspects. So basically, an AI, neural network algorithm, will learn from the data it is fed. For example, in this context of this project we did, this jellyfish does not exist. It's learned to generate images that are essentially somehow jellyfish-like, or as we recognize them jellyfish-like, but they're actually not jellyfish, not really coherent jellyfish.
And just to share a little bit with you of what we have actually done with this. This is one of our first project collaborations together that started around 3 years ago now. And I was at a kind of transition point where I had been generating a lot of images and videos, and I had mainly been working in 2 dimensions. But when I met Feileacan, I told him I'd really like to take this line of research or artistic exploration to 3D. And he came up with an idea to work with a 3-dimensional neural network. So our first project is artificial remnants, and we generated this kind of insectile life forms. This is like one of the latest generations. We did like a series of several generations. The first ones looked really just like a blob, and with time we started kind of fine-tuning and understanding better how to work with a 3D data set and 3D neural networks. And yeah, this is a gigantic inflatable sculpture that we did recently in China, in Shanghai. Unfortunately, we never got to see it in person, but this same exploration has been adapted to like 3D renders and kind of like tell the story of each of these organisms.
Yeah, and one of these interesting things about working with these artificial life forms is, again, this question of data. For example, when trying to generate insects, for example, one would think there's a lot of, openly available to use data about insects, also in 3 dimensions, but in fact, there's not. So for us, this has become really quite an interesting exercise in using the data available to us, which often is very little compared to the vast amount of insect species and forms, and the sheer diversity of the insect life form is really quite incredible. But what's available to us, especially in the digital space, is often, very much a small fraction of that. But it's been for us very fascinating to both use AI to generate form, but also descriptions and sound recordings and so on. So basically, as a way of exploring and making tangible some of that essence of what data we have available, what is our actual sort of like available window into that natural world if we aren't to, travel the world ourselves.
Yeah, and when the pandemic struck, we felt like generating single creatures wasn't enough, and we wanted to change the focus to an ecosystem, because we felt like the concept of relationship is very abstract and it's very hard to express. So we thought like the ecosystem, and particularly the marine ecosystem, really helps as a kind of symbolic way of representing this. And if we think about it, it is kind of hard to draw a boundary to an ecosystem, because every ecosystem is ultimately connected to another one or another set of organisms that exist outside of it. So we felt like this was a good starting point to talk about marine data sets as well, and how to dream up marine biodiversity using neural networks.
But of course, this wasn't actually, this was of course a lot easier said than done, especially when it came to actually finding data. For example, corals. Now we chose coral reefs as the ecosystem I like to focus upon. But when it comes to finding, for example, three-dimensional data about corals online, there's basically nothing there. So we had to, in fact, enlist the help of a fellow artist, Joel Simon, who's done a lot of interesting work with genetic algorithms to grow coral based upon the general sort of like rules of how their morphologies take shape, and use that to train a neural network. So what we have in the end is this sort of ecosystem of species that, while it might seem, at first glance like a lot, it is in fact just a very, very pale reflection of the actual diversity of coral reefs. But at the same time, what's interesting about that and what has been part of this is to explore how can we tell stories, not only about what we know and what we believe, but also where the boundaries are, and how, because of the way we use these tools, we're able to create, especially in the digital experiences and interactions, that allow us to connect to something that we can't normally access or know very little about. As in coral reefs, very few have access to actually go diving there. So for us, these are ways of exploring using the digital layer of the world as a direct means of creating contact and experiences with nature. And of course, this project then became very much, in a way, an entry point into seeing how do we talk about the oceans of which we know so little, and also how do we try and make tangible in some ways what we know currently, and how can we start to explore and stretch from there. So yeah, and just continuing on to this and to a couple of our more recent projects, sort of like a bridge to that. One of the things that has been very interesting for us as we sort of work more and more both with data of the natural world, but also how the natural world is represented or rather isn't, especially in the digital sphere, we started to look a lot at these data sets, which are the benchmarks for neural networks. For example, ImageNet, which you see with the images on the left side of this slide here, which are some 14 million images of everything from people, cats, dogs, toasters, cars, all kinds of things which are normally used to train object detection algorithms, but can be also trained to generate image generating neural network models. And these models become a reflection of what we can really call mundane data. So basically this data has been deemed to be relevant or the most relevant to be able to create a good picture or recognize our daily world in a useful way. So what we have are these models which very much reflect the mundanity of the world. And as you see on the right side of this slide, they very much generate images, of everything from a digital clock to a dog to a computer, cars, hubcaps, etc. And this is, of course, very interesting and very problematic. Now, for the first part, some 14 million images sounds like a lot, but we know of some 8.3 million species on the planet, and we estimate that there are maybe, still 40% left undiscovered. So, and very much those species are not all represented. Primarily, it's a lot more of the more familiar animals and plants and so on. So primarily this is often, more man-made, so to speak, or artificial artifacts. And at the same time, we're in a world that's changing a lot. So what is relevant now, and as to quote the climate thinker Alex Steffen, there is no new normal. That is, we are within a changing world. So what we have are these mundane models that are trained upon, standard data sets and that are often, continue to be used year after year. And at the same time, we have a trajectory wherein this changing worlds means that these are becoming rapidly obsolete, also because the images they conjure are of a world that was, not necessarily a world that is. So as our job as artists, and what has become very interesting to us, is to try and stretch, start with this familiar data with the available data, and try and stretch it out to engage back with the actual real world as it's occurring. So
yeah, so for us, a lot of this exploration goes along the question of how can we use this artificial life to entangle or to connect with what we understand to be the other in the sense of what is that which is different to us. And very often this is the way that we have understood nature. So on what Feileacan was explaining, we came up with this idea for a series where we use mundane models that are trained on this mundane data, but we use them to reach out to those places that we haven't seen. And particularly in this series, hybrid ecosystems, what we wanted to do is talk about these worlds where there's no clear boundary between nature and technology. So a field of kelp or a manta ray could have like a Wi-Fi connection or be covered in kind of microchips, and there wouldn't be like a clear boundary to where the technology starts and where it ends.
And as such, these explorations within the series for us became a way of exploring how can we try and expand our imagination of what a more ecological future could look like, or one where we see the difference between technology, the artificial, so-called artificial, and the natural, to become harmoniously one. And what kind of aesthetics, how does that world look or feel? Because very often we can't really imagine that. And this leads us to the latest project.
Yeah, and furthermore, we thought, okay, how can we actually use this technology to bring visibility to real creatures? And particularly, one of the most concerning categories of creatures is the critically endangered, because this is the category of creatures that are on the edge of going extinct in the wild. And once a creature goes extinct in the wild, it means that maybe before going extinct, there are a few specimens that are kept under human supervision and they don't exist anymore in a wild context, which is hugely problematic, of course, because it means it would need further reintroduction to for the species. So we wanted to work on something that brings visibility to the species that we can save and that we can connect with before they go extinct in the wild. And to do this, we trained a really large neural network on around 8 million images of the natural world. And we used it we prompted with descriptions of real species. So this isn't anymore like any imaginary species, they're actually like real living creatures. And here there's an example of Newton's fiscal, which is a bird. And this is what the real bird looks like. But when prompted, the neural network depicted it like the image you see, well, on my right, I guess that would be on your left. And as you can see, like the neural network knows it's a bird, but it doesn't know that the plumage color. So, oh, I'm missing something. So, well, with that note, we want to thank you very much for listening to us, and please feel free to reach out to us with any questions in the future. So, thank you.
Okay, now we lost, I don't know, we don't see them anymore. Are you there, Sofia? Yeah?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we're
Okay,
here.
great. You've been faded out here. I was a little bit afraid that you might have lost the connection. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting work you are doing. I mean, where shall I start? I have a number of topics I could discuss with you. You said that it's active dreaming what you are doing, like a type of speculative work you are providing, right? My question is always, if we feed the models things which are already existing, and we believe in the fact that the model itself can not do something which is really beyond what we feed. It can do alterations of it, but really beyond, it might be difficult. So my question would then be, how do you see it? I mean, can you really active dream? Can you innovate something? Can you really create fully new ecosystems while you have only existing ecosystem data to train your model? Is that something which resonates with you, that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are many ways to approach this. One of the ways is the perspective of bias in machine learning and the problem of creating better representation for the natural world. So, for example, the red panda or the giant panda, those are creatures that are very known by humans and that have received lots of conservation efforts. But there are a lot of other creatures that are known very little and exist. So the issue is like, where do we get that data to represent those creatures? But there's also the other perspective, which is more like the imagination itself. And if there is no data, how can we use what we have to create something new from that? And I think something that's very empowering about working with this kind of algorithms or augmented creativity is that we can generate thousands or whatever amount we want of iterations based on a data set, and we can extract patterns from that data set and very clearly see what is happening in there and what feels inspiring to us as artists. So yeah, I don't know if you want to...
I think it's important to sort of note that it's not really a goal to generate new ecosystems so much as it is to try and explore how, thanks to using these algorithms that often distill all this data down into something very tangible and visually sort of like concrete, and using that as a way to sort of create a more tangible understanding of the limits of our knowledge. And at the same time, of course, there is a lot we know and we cannot really step beyond, but that doesn't mean that we can't try. And a lot of what we have experienced working with these tools is that through active attempts, trying to expand how we imagine things, to try and push towards things we do not know, we often have, a very creative process as a consequence from that. But of course, it's very hard to imagine a color that you have never seen before, but that doesn't mean that you can't try to, move in that direction. And especially, I think, in terms of connecting with the natural world or the more than human world, this, is very, very much a productive endeavor.
Thank you. We could discuss this, I think, nicely back and forth, but I have a question from the audience online, and it is more practical. What background are you coming from, the two of you? I guess is it more coming from computer science or something like that, or are you coming more from the creative part, or are you possibly, each of you have a different background or something? Tell us. I think it's interesting for people.
Well, so speaking for myself, I studied art direction, and eventually I realized that I wanted to do arts. So I explored like photography, filmmaking, and eventually when I found out about generative art and particularly about neural networks, I really became fascinated and starting learning online, but also at the School of Machines in Berlin. I did like a 1-month course there, which really kind of skyrocketed my interest. And yeah,
I'm originally trained as an architect, so I practiced for a while as an architect before growing very much frustrated with the state of architecture and ecology, and decided to sort of take a more direct approach to working with storytelling and the ways that we see the modern human world and interact with that. And then I had the fortune of starting to, by chance, connecting with Sofia and being able to collaborate, and was through that introduced to generative art and machine learning. So which, well, went quickly from there. Basically, the moral of the story is you do not need to come from a science background at all.
Sorry, I cut you. Sorry.
No, I was just saying you do not need to come from a computer science background at all. I
think for many people from the creative trades I know and I meet, they have a huge respect on tech. I mean, ask a designer, would you like to do something with tech? And they say, no, I want to do design, and tech is something others should do. So how did you come across that threshold, that hurdle there?
I mean, for me personally, it was really just a matter of trial and error. I mean, of course, you know, you always have this the imposter syndrome, in a sense that something's very technical, and especially I think within the design field, we're very technical tools often feel like they're putting a straitjacket on you in terms of direction and ideas. But honestly, at the end of the day, for me, sort of this realization that, you know, machine learning, generative, you know, code tools and so on, they're basically a different kind of pencil, a pencil that allows you to draw in a very different way that is better suited for some things than other things. And this sort of like realization that through trial and error, through getting to know these tools, you sort of, after a while, start to develop a certain sense of intuition about what kind of work or projects or concepts are suited to these kind of tools. And thus they become part of, you know, the creative toolkit rather than a sort of, you know, very rigid box which you can't really break free of very easily.
Yeah, I think, well, I call it the hacker mindset, because it's this idea that you don't have to be formally educated in anything to take it and break it apart and try to understand how it works. I was also lucky that at the very beginning I had a mentor, Gene Kogan, who helped demystify a lot the technology. And well, he told me several times, like, you know, you don't need to understand everything in the code you're running, because with time you start to get an intuitive sense of what is happening, very intuitive, but still of what you can do with that. And well, with a lot of time, I started to kind of want to understand more and more what was happening. So kind of started breaking things apart and combining things. So I think a lot of it came from following this, like, break it till you make it, like just break something and then, you know, try to make something from that. Yeah.
I assume that you guys also you approach it with a certain top-down idea that I want to make, but then also, like in each other creative aspect, when things are not working in the way you would expect that they work, that does not necessarily mean that this is a dead end. Sometimes out of those mistakes or errors or unexpected things, also interesting things are coming out, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very top-down approach in this sense, but it's also fascinating because we work with engineers too. So we ask them questions like, so, you know, we have a back and forth, and they kind of help us like build something that makes more sense to what we are trying to do. So that's only something recent. At the beginning, we didn't get so much engineering help. But it is still like fascinating to combine those two approaches. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, great. Guys, it was really very interesting. Thank you for your presentation. We set a very tight schedule of just 30 minutes for each of our speakers here. It was obviously, it is very tight, it's too short, we have many more things to discuss, but on the other hand, it is also, I think, a good point, because this HHai event, as the entire AIX design initiative, is about building networks among those people around the world, those few people, I have to say, who are like-minded, who are part of that community working in the creative AI space, as you guys do. And then I think you are open and happy if people approach you directly with possibly more follow-on questions, as I person here, or at another occasion have you in person here or somewhere else in the world. Thank you, Sofia. Thank you, Feileacan. I hope I did not completely mispronounce your name. And I hope that Matthias is already in the line. Is that true?
Hi, Peter. I'm here.
Matthias, you are wie die Maurer, we would say in German. As the people who are building the walls, the wall builders, they are always in time. You are. Thank you very much. I'm happy to present Matthias Röder, whom I know for a couple of years already. He is a creative person who is interested and was interested in technology for long, and also he has a business MBA, so that's a real combination. And I think he will introduce himself for a moment and then introduce us, especially, the Beethoven X project, where he was heading a team of creative people and also tech guys, people from around the globe to establish something which would have been originally expected from Beethoven himself. Matthias, the stage is you.
Thank you, Peter. I'm really happy to be with you guys virtually. Of course, it would have been much more fun to be in Hamburg today. First day of spring, birthday of J.S. Bach. I am a musician by training, and I had this fascination with technology for many, many years. I don't have a MBA, no Masters of Business Administration like the previous speakers. I picked that up in a hacker mode. So I learned by doing, I learned from many failures. And now I'm managing the estate of Herbert von Karajan, who was one of the big conductors in the 20th century, someone who had been very much interested in technology himself. And what we do in Salzburg and globally is to organize events around music and technology to further, the understanding of classical music. Today, I'm going to speak to you and hopefully then discuss also a project that is very dear to my heart, using artificial intelligence to be creative in the field of music. And the main idea about this is to say, well, creativity is not something that is solely reserved to the geniuses and the super talented ones. No, it's actually something that even machines can learn. Of course, this is a huge project. The idea came actually from Deutsche Telekom, from Michael Schuld there, who called me a couple of years ago, I have to say by now, this was in 2019, and asked, Matthias, is it possible to use AI to complete the unfinished symphony of Beethoven? And I said, well, I don't know, Michael. It's actually a really, really difficult task, both from a musicological standpoint, but also from a technical standpoint. And then there are lots of questions around, is this art? What will people think about it? But Deutsche Telekom was very brave and committed. And so they said, well, you'll go out, figure out if it can be done, and we'll support it. So we did go out, and it's a team of people working on this. I was just the person who was leading the project. I put the team together consisting of a computer scientist, a musician, a composer, a computer music informatician, and many, many people who help with putting this program together. So today I want to give you a little bit of an insight into this. And for that, I'm going to start my presentation. And I hope you will all be able to see this. Can you see this? Okay, I think this should work. So when people think about AI and music, they think about robots playing instruments, right? And sometimes they are cute, sometimes they look a little bit strange. Some people think about AI and music as sort of the machines are now taking over and taking away the jobs of composers. This is a funny picture with Shostakovich, one of the great composers, like the Terminator. What we had in mind when we created this project was, of course, the opposite. We wanted to create tools for creatives to use in their own compositional process. The technology, and I don't think with this audience I have to go into much detail, is based on the idea of artificial neural networks. So these are simulations of the networks that are present in biological neural networks. They have multiple structures that you can use. Essentially, this has been used a lot in the technology and the business side, where you, like in this example, you understand what is a handwritten signature. I won't go into details here, but the cool thing is if you actually train a neural network with images, for instance, of artworks, then what you can do is you can actually use a little trick and get the network to create new things. And so these are images created by the research group of Ahmed El-Gamal, who's also the AI partner that we had in the Beethoven AI project, to create artworks. And these artworks were put on display by him in Art Basel at Miami, and were created in an exhibition next to images, paintings done by human artists. And the idea was to get the response of the people visiting. And what they found out was that most people thought these images were perfectly well, and they were really like emotional and touching them. And when people found out that they were created by a computer, they actually weren't so happy about that. Same project here that you probably know is painting of portraits by Rembrandt. This is not a painting done by Rembrandt. It is in the style of Rembrandt. So the AI learns the style from the training set that it sees in the preparation phases. Now with music, I hope you can hear the example as well. You have a lot of examples already who are doing convincing music. This is a drone-like music. It works very well. It's created by an AI. The idea is here that it is used to get you in a certain mood. For instance, for studying or for concentration or for sleeping. Brain FM, a company that has been providing this for many years. Another example is an AI trained with the music of the Beatles. And here's an example of what the Beatles sound with AI.
I guess your sound is off.
Peter, what are you saying?
Matthias, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Peter, I can hear you. Can you hear
Matthias,
me?
we lost your sound. I see the picture, but I don't hear you anymore. It was when the AI was playing Beatles. I don't know whether there was a content issue or technical.
Can you hear me now?
I don't know. Huh?
Hello.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us? Can we hear you? Kann ich irgendwas machen oder?
Peter, can you hear me?
Yes.
Peter, can you hear me now?
We have I don't know what type of problem, but for moments we could not hear you.
Okay, so you didn't hear the examples from the Beatles, right?
This was the killer.
Yeah, so the Beatles AI killed the connection. I'm going to go back into my presentation and I'll avoid the Beatles slide. Okay, I hope you can see this and hear me.
We can see it and hear you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to skip another example, which was an AI that created chorale harmonizations in the style of J.S. Bach. Now, in our project, the Beethoven X project, we had a very different kind of departure point. You know, Beethoven, when he wrote the Ninth Symphony, which everyone knows, with the Ode to Joy and this very famous work in the history of music, he was also working on a Second Symphony at the same time. And he, you know, wrote down many ideas in the form of musical sketches. But those were not finished by him. And so I brought with me an example of a sketchbook. You see it on the left side of the screen. Beethoven used these books to write down his ideas, and he would use them in the compositional process, go back to pages, cross out things. It's really hard to actually, if you're not trained in this music and history of music, to make anything out of this. So there are about 40 to 50 of these musical ideas that Beethoven wrote down. And I'll magnify one of the examples for you. You see it doesn't have the clef, which indicates the right kind of pitch. It is really hard to make out what it actually is. But scholars have translated this into human readable form, and that's what you see on the bottom of this. And this is the material that we have for this 10th symphony. Of course, you can imagine if a human were to finish this piece, or the ideas that Beethoven wrote down into a finished piece, they would bring a lot of their own ideas, their own style, their own character into composing this. The advantage of the AI is that it actually doesn't understand anything about music except what it knows from the training period. And so the AI is the perfect tool to do this kind of job. We use the AI on a lot of music, but not nearly as much as one would hope. So we had the symphonies of Beethoven, we had his piano sonatas, string quartets, we also had music of contemporaries. But what we set out to do was to actually teach it always the next note and the likelihood of the next note. I want to briefly speak about the team that put together this AI. The person on the computational side is Ahmed Elgamal. You've seen his work in the other slides I showed you with the artworks. And Ahmed is one of the foremost experts in creative AI as it pertains to paintings. He had never done anything in AI and music, but I really wanted to have him because he had a fresh view on the problem. And when I explained to him what we have as musicologists and in the world of Beethoven, he said, after thinking about it for a couple of days, he came back to me and he said, like, well, actually, it's kind of like autocomplete in emails, where, you know, you want to predict what the next note could be. So the input would be what Beethoven wrote down, and then you continue note by note by note. And so in the training, and you have to read this slide from the bottom to the top, you start with one slice in the music, and then you tell the network, now you have to predict what the next slice is, and you move it by one note. And so the training data set is actually all of these different slices of music. And the AI learns, if I have this input, then Beethoven writes this output. So the seed is what Beethoven writes down in his ideas. And then the seed is going to be prolonged, is going to go through the AI, and it generates new notes in the style of Beethoven. And it's an iterative process. Of course, in the process, we created many different types of AI. We created the one that, you know, continues the sketches of Beethoven in his style, but we also created an AI that could, you know, create an accompaniment to a melody that Beethoven wrote down, sort of like what is the band playing, the orchestra playing as the melody is heard. We created an AI that could bridge gaps between material of Beethoven and AI generated, or AI and AI generated sections. We also tried to create an AI that would take the result of the AI and turn it into a score for the orchestra. An example, which note is played by which instrument. This is actually something where we tried very much to you know, break new ground, and it worked pretty well. But it's also sort of the moment where we had to realize, okay, this is the thing that an AI can't do yet perfectly well. So you can imagine that working with these different types of AIs and translating from scores into machine readable and back into human readable scores and all of these different steps, there are a lot of translations happening. And this was one of the things that took the most time for us. Data preparation on the one hand, training, but then the translations going into the AI, out of the AI, and into the human world. And in the beginning, we were quite happy with, as a team, we were extremely happy with the results. But I wanted to bring to you a couple of examples that, you know, don't sound convincing to, say, a normal music expert, because they don't sound like Beethoven, but they sound like music. And these are the outtakes, and they are quite fun to listen to. So I hope you can hear this. So it starts with music by Beethoven, but now it goes into the AI. And you can hear it makes sense musically, but it's not the style of Beethoven. So we were encouraged by this, but when we presented this to Deutsche Telekom, I could see the face of the CEO of Deutsche Telekom go like, oh my God, what are we doing? A couple of months later, this AI was already very strong. And this is, I think, an interesting aspect of all of this. You can see that with more training and with better training sets, we created new and better training sets, we could have a really, really strong AI. And I want to play you now an example from the finished symphony. It's played by the Beethoven Orchestra, Bonn, and we'll play you a short segment of maybe a minute of music. And it's going to start with something that Beethoven wrote down, but then quickly goes into material that was created by the AI. And just listen for yourself and see if you can point to the moment when the AI takes over. So I don't know if you were able to pinpoint the moment. It's actually happening quite soon. It's only 8 seconds of Beethoven's music and all the rest comes from the AI. Where are we going with this? Now, the next thing that we did was we gave our AI to Robbie Williams, famous pop musician, who used the Beethoven AI to reorchestrate his famous song Angels. And this is going in the direction that we had always dreamt of, namely that you can use an AI like this as a creative tool. You can use it as a composer to use the music of Beethoven, but you could also train it on your own music, for instance, and create new kinds of artworks this way. Now, I want to stop here. Time is progressing. I have more examples that maybe we can take a look at another time, but I want to give you guys the opportunity to ask questions, and maybe we can have a little discussion about the Beethoven X project.
Yes, I hope you can hear me now. Yeah, you hear me? Yeah, you see me.
Yes.
Okay, great. Good. Thank you, Matthias. This was, again, quite a thing. Where shall I start? Is there questions from the audience? Yeah, I start with one from my side. Obviously, the technical approach seems to be a little bit like those language models, GPT-3 and others, transformer models, which also form a sentence, something based on the likelihood of the next word, so to say. So music and language seem to be not too far away here. Is that right?
That's correct. Our approach was to think about a way that we can actually create music with longer periods that make sense. Often when you have AI created music, it's very convincing for 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 10 seconds maybe, but after that it falls apart. And our approach was very much geared towards longer structures that make sense. Now, you have to understand that if we would initialize the AI, give it one of the seats of Beethoven, it would create 200, 300 different versions overnight that we would then listen through, give feedback and do it again. So this is a long iterative process, but we could tell from the beginning that our system was capable of creating long stretches of music. I'm talking about, a couple of minutes, which made sense. But one of the things that we could even improve was to give more context in the training data. So at some point we actually hired, 15 musicologists to go through all of the music in the training set and annotate it with additional information about, is this a moment where something new is introduced? Is this a moment where you have something that is being reworked, that is being developed? And that brought the AI to another level, actually.
Obviously, it is, many people have the assumption there is this one thing, AI, which does something like that, a project like that. And we, in our practice, we know that it's not so, but you have different tools, you chain in a process chain so that the output of the first tool is the input for the next tool. You showed that slide also where you also were speaking about those translation issues or challenges you were facing. Can you speak a little bit about this chaining?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, people think like, oh, you press a button and the finished symphony comes out. In reality, it's a collaboration between a team of experts, human experts, and this algorithm. And it is really a set of tools that we created. And I'll give you an example. As musicians, we read musical scores, which we can see they are written in a certain way. If you're a good musician, you hear what the music is supposed to sound like as you read the text. But the computer has no concept of that, really. It only understands, specific instructions when it comes to music. So we translated all of this into MIDI, which is one of these file formats. But then the AI itself doesn't understand MIDI even, so it needs to be translated into an internal representation. So the code that does all of that, it's a program in itself. You have to debug it. It has problems. Then the AI does its thing. It has a result in its internal representation, translates that into MIDI, again, another program to do the translation. Then from there, you translate it into something that we can hear or that we can read. And so there are all of these steps where errors could happen. And sometimes it wasn't clear to us, is the AI providing, something that doesn't make sense, or is it just one of our programs that is doing the translation? So this was a huge engineering task, in addition to all of the, cognitive aspects of music cognition.
So it's the famous lost in translation. You are in danger here to fall into. There is a question also which drives me in the coming from YouTube about the rights. I mean, whenever you do something with music, much more simpler things than creating a music based on a famous composer or singer or something with an AI. The questions of rights come up, right? So how is it here? I mean, it's interesting also who owns that model now. Is it the telecom? Is it public domain? What exactly? How is that?
So when you look at musical rights, copyright, and I'm speaking here in very general terms, right? Essentially, the idea in most jurisdictions is that only humans can have copyright. Because what you need in order to get a copyright is human invention and being sort of above a certain threshold with your creativity. Now, obviously, that doesn't work as a machine produces something. So with this project, we are actually at the border of what a lot of our jurisdictions can actually do. And so in a way, an innovative project such as this one pushes our lawmakers to think about what is going to happen when machines create more, when we use machines to create patents, when we use AI algorithms to help with drug discovery, and so on and so on. So these are all questions that are currently being debated, and we were very happy that we could contribute to this discussion.
engineering, yeah, so providing that useful, helpful prompts, inputs that the machine can then follow on. Is that also part of the creation or the curation later? That was also a question coming from the internet, where people said, who were the jury picking those from the multitude of offerings the machine was giving you. So I mean, all this is also part of the creative process, isn't it?
Exactly. It's, as I said earlier, it's a team of experts that was working on this, and we were doing something in a collaborative fashion. So in a way, this is a collaboration not only between human and machine, but also between a panel of experts. And I'd say that the idea was really to say, well, if we try to be faithful to what Beethoven wrote down, what are the assumptions we can make? And this is something we discussed with experts from the Beethoven House, from Harvard University, from Cambridge University. And then based on these assumptions, how do we choose the elements that the AI provided? In the end, you know, we wanted to present it in such a way that humans can perform it and have emotions while they perform it, and so that it would create emotions in the public as well when they listen to it. I want to also say that, of course, you know, this project, if you are skeptical of machine intelligence, of creativity that comes from non-human sources, it's going to be a different impact that it has on you than if you are open to these kinds of developments. And this is exactly what we saw. There was a huge discussion going on in the public about whether this is art, whether one is allowed to do this, should one do this, is it good, is it bad? That's precisely what Deutsche Telekom and us wanted to achieve, namely to raise the awareness that there is a seismic shift in the way that we can create. And the question is, what do we do with it?
Yeah, great. Really good to hear. I mean, actually, there is no other question from the internet anymore, so I make one last one from my side. Interesting. I mean, you performed those the music in concert halls. I guess there was one also here in the Elbphilharmonie, right? So there was a quite an audience having that. In the very beginning, you were speaking about this issue where if you let a machine create, an AI create something, and then something really perfect comes out, then people are a way of disappointed. They say, okay, that's music. Yes, it's what was created by an AI. Yeah, but I don't see it, or I don't hear that it comes from an AI. We see it also on the visual side. Yeah, if you train a GAN to create something, then you have these things which are completely useless, the blob and things like that. And then you have those things which are perfect, no irritation whatsoever, and then you have those in the middle where you see, it's a little bit, I don't know, uncomfort, uncanny or something, right? And this is what people want to have. They are not happy if the tool is really doing what it should do, just create a perfect picture or create a perfect composition. How was this when when you had these events in the Elbphilharmonie and wherever you were performing this? Did you also experience something like that people were disappointed that they could not distinct if it's done by a machine or not?
Yes and no. I mean, that was also the fascination, right? I mean, we had, for instance, a rehearsal in which we had the musicians ask, so where's the AI part? We only have the Beethoven part, but they had the AI part. Then we had moments where musicians said like, oh, well, Beethoven would have never done this. And the same for the audience. I think that was part of the of that project, is to stimulate the discussion and get people out of their comfort zone, really. Now, I understand that if you are an artist, you know, that's a different perspective. You want to use the tool to do something that, you know, is novel and that is at the same time your own. So that's why I'm so happy about the collaboration now with Robbie Williams and others to come, where actually we turn this Beethoven AI into a tool that others use to create music that they couldn't have done but without it, or things that, you know, they found interesting, they wanted to do. For the audience in the end, in a way, Peter, I think it has always been the case that the end result is something that the audience can appreciate, of course, but they will not be able to appreciate all of the sources where things come from. And all of the hardships that an artist goes through or a group of artists go through to create this. So that's in a way the thing that the AI has to live with. In the end, it will go a little bit uncredited.
Yeah. Matthias, thank you very much. One very last question, which was put in the internet, was the question, where can we hear that mashup between Beethoven, AI, and Robbie Williams? I understood that this is yet to come, right, or yet to be published?
It was announced that we're doing this. The music itself is not published yet, so watch out for this space. In the meantime, you can listen to our Beethoven X project on all of the different streaming services. Just search for Beethoven X and I'm sure you will be able to find it.
Great. Thank you very much, Matthias. Sorry that I put you in the wrong corner by saying you have an MBA or this and that, but what I can say, your new look looks really good. People don't know that how you looked before, but the beard is really good. Thank you very much, Matthias. I have to say that we are coming to the end of our online event now for today, obviously. Tomorrow at 9:30 sharp CET, Central European Time, we are meeting again here. Not exactly that stream, but it's another stream which you can jump off our website. We will start by 9:30 with Lulu Lee, artist and designer, calling in via Zoom from Bali. And be followed by Xiao Yuxi, new media artist, calling in from Shenzhen in China. We will have a very interesting follow-on program tomorrow. We will have our Creative Kitchen workshops, of which I was speaking lengthily already earlier. And then there will be from 2:30 p.m. CET onwards until 7 o'clock, we will have in half an hour slots, very interesting speakers calling in from New York, from Singapore, from Stuttgart, from Munich, and so on. Be part of it. Come by, tell people about this event online, and yes, come by, because this is not only an online event, it is a hybrid event. We have an audience here in the Design Zentrum Hamburg, in the Hafen City. Come by, it's a nice place. We have food and drinks, and that's exactly what we're gonna enjoy now in the get-together, meeting real people face to face here. On the deck of the Design Zentrum Hamburg. Yes, it was nice. Thank you for joining us. Come by tomorrow, and as I said, tell about us. Oh, what I completely forgot. Obviously, for such a get together, you also need music. Normally, you would hire a DJ or a DJ. What we did also, we hired a DJ, but it's an artificial intelligence DJ, and it comes from Algorithm. Thank you, Algorithm, providing us this. You will see the founder of Algorithm at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon, and we will have the same get-together opportunities tomorrow. So come by. It's a hybrid event, and we'll see you either online or here in person. Thank you for tonight.